Welcome back, everybody, to Gringos Liberados. This is episode 10, and this one is a little bit more special. We have finished the regular season, and this episode is going to be largely focused on our awards for this split. We have got first, second, and third team All-Pro, as well as Rookie of the Split and that coveted MVP of the split, as awarded by the broadcast team on the CBLOL English channel. Now, I've got three beautiful guests with me once again, Trajan, RMC, and Yeso, all ready to join me. And now, before we get into the awards, we do have to talk about week number 9, because it wasn't without its trials and tribulations, its glory, its imperfections, its CBLOL diff. So, Trajan, if we pass over to the games that we had, and I'm going to open the floor. I'm actually going to come to RMC first for initial thoughts on week number 9 and what actually happened here to level us into the playoffs?
Like you said, CBLOL diff. There was some, considering the last week, there was quite a lot of chaos actually, because we had the time attack where Furia tried to put off the buzzer beater, which we will talk about, I'm sure. I almost crapped myself on the last day when Payne decided to try and run a pole comp. So that was interesting as well. Red and Cade Stars were kind of fun as well. So just a lot of chaos, and it actually messed up the standings interestingly and gave us the playoffs that we currently have.
Yeah, I wonder if we can maybe get the standings up. Also, not sure if we can, but we'll see if Trajan can work some magic in the background whilst we're sorting that. I do want to talk about that Furia buzzer beater though, because we were watching Saturday's game and there was a decided point where we were all going, are they going to do it?
Just
there we go.
It's fine.
It does indeed work. So those are the standings for everybody as well. You can see there top to bottom. I'm not going to read them out. People can read. Sorry, podcast audio only listeners. That's my bad. Pain Gaming came first, joint with Red Canids. For 14 and 4, but Pain take first seed solely because of reasons. Miles go into third, 13 and 5. INTZ round out our top 4 at 11 and 7. But Fluxu go into 5th, also on 11 and 7. They lose the tiebreaker versus INTZ. Vivo Cade Stars finish off our playoffs lineup, and Furia weren't quite able to finish the buzzer beater. Even if they were, the Cade Stars did beat Red on the final game of the regular season. So it would have been a glorious run, but not one that was successful, unfortunately. I think the Furia first game composition, so I'm going to pass to you because it was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, honestly, I loved it. They just draft a full composition of like AoE team fighting. They had the Kennen, they had the Nico, and they had a Pike in there for Zai. So getting a last look at that pocket pick that has been so good for him this year was really cool. But that was in explosive composition and it worked. Not quite as well as they were hoping, which is crazy to say considering they finished the game in under 20 minutes. But they were shooting for that 16-minute mark and they couldn't quite get it. They almost did.
Strat, right? They had it on time for like 16 or something, but they didn't stack the minions right in front of the Herald. As Alfie said in the interview, and or Maestro said, I should say.
They got too overeager, because what you're supposed to do when you're going for a fast end like that is you actually delay taking the inhib so that you can stack 2 waves of minions on the inhibitor, because they don't get killed because there's no turret there, and then you have a bigger wave going into the Nexus turrets. Obviously, they would have had Herald there as well in an ideal situation, so it's not particularly easy, but they fumbled slightly. Still managed to win a game, the fastest ever game in CBLOL history. It wasn't the biggest fumble we've ever seen. Our fastest regular season game. Okay. But yeah, Furia certainly tried.
Yeah.
And ultimately, there's a lot of things to walk away from. I think it would have been, imagine if they did complete the time attack just to not make it because of Red shitting the bed on the last day. That would have been pure chaos. But I will say this, and we'll maybe get into it more later on the shows this weekend. It's hard to draw a lot of indictments, but the mission for VKS on Saturday was very simple, and I don't think it was that hard, and they failed terribly. The fact that VKS couldn't survive through 20 minutes is such an indictment on this team.
I actually think that because going into the weekend, the mission was, for them, I think, should have been get top 4. Now, that was possible. It wouldn't have ended up being possible given how games had played out, but like that should have been cycling in their brain. I actually don't like the idea of surviving 20 minutes was their goal. It should have been... if you're in that position, if I'm the coach of VKS, and again, this is my perspective, I've not been a coach, don't know what it's going to be, but I would be saying, guys, we're locking playoffs. Fury aren't winning in 33 minutes regardless. They're not winning 2 games. We want to get top 4. That's our goal here. And they didn't come as close as maybe they would have liked to, but I think that the lose pre 20 minutes ideology should never have been in their minds in the first place.
Yeah. I agree with you to an extent, but I think exactly how Fury is going to come in and play that game. It is not a mystery, and you can very easily draft around that. And granted, it's not easy when like you have all this AoE crowd control coming onto your team to like disengage and not take those fights. But like it felt like VKS was like stacking on top of each other and saying, please engage onto us, because in that short of a game, Fury had a wealth of opportunities for perfect team fights for their composition. So like I don't know. I'm not high on VKS. Is really where I'm at.
The moment that really, like, when I was in the green room watching, just like, oh my god, is it happening, was when they were at that top inhib tower, and then Tuts gets like the Nico all over the wall, and it's like, how has he been allowed to do that? All we had to do is not give him this one play, and they almost lost in under 17 minutes because of that, and it very much was within VKS's power to just not give them that. You don't have to give them the exact perfect angle every time. So I think VKS just completely mental dissolved in that game. And like, you're dying to random pike chromes as Ahri in the mid lane. Like, this isn't why we pick Ahri, man. Like, it really felt like VKS just didn't log in to that game. Yeah. And then they came back and beat Red. So whatever.
I guess. Like, guys, are we surprised that VKS did this? They've been doing this all split, where they lose games horrifically, and they come back swinging harder than ever, and then they take on teams that are better than them and beat them. And that was literally, I love that it was game 5 on Sunday too. It was the very last game. It had stakes because it knocked Red from 1st seed down to 2nd seed because of that loss. And K-Stars just shook off Saturn, and you're just like, okay, we know we done goofed. We lost in 20 minutes. Now we're going to go beat the best team in the league. Right now, they came in and they smashed against Red. So it's just very Cade Stars of them at the end of the day.
I've said the entire split long, I think VKS can beat anybody in the league, but I also think they can lose to anyone in the league. So they just have that. They have that highest volatility. If nobody else has any thoughts on week 9, I'll open the floor quickly for pauses. I do want to move into our awards show, because this is the excitement. It's what people are here for. It's where the Twitter screenshots are going to go crazy. It's where the clips are going to be farmed, and Trajan's going to get even more cancelled in Brazilian League of Legends. So let's start with the top lane.
I'll say it real quick. Okay. My last couple of quick thoughts. Huge for INTZ to lock top 4 and complete the 2-0 for Fluxu. I think they're coming in looking really solid. They're going to have a tough test in their first match, but I love the way INTZ entered playoffs, as well as Loud coming in on another tear. I believe it's 6 games in a row for the team. They had a 7-game win streak and then a 6-game win streak, and I think playoff Loud is here. So I'm running scared from the Loud fans now because of all my horrendous favorite takes, but I am running directly into the welcome opening arms of the INTZ fans that have engaged with me on Twitter, and I can just say like the giant has awoken, and the actual INTZ account would be like, this guy gets it. So I'm good now. I'm just a refugee heading towards INTZ who slipped into top 4. So they will save me.
My arms are open. You will come to me after this weekend.
I'm not masochistic enough, I'm afraid, to be a Pain Gaming fan. You can keep that one, brother.
You chose INTZ against Pain?
We'll
see about that, Trajan.
I still have a play-by-plays like naivete at heart, so I have to believe in the underdog, you see.
Alrighty. Week 9 wrapped up, end of regular season, so let's give some awards out. We're going to start in the top lane, and I think that this is the most unanimous role that we ended up having. This is the one with the least contention for positions. So for our first team, or for third team All-Pro, we have FMB. Second team All-Pro, ZZK. First team All-Pro, Wiser. So Red Knid's top lane third, INTZ top laner at second, Pain Gaming top laner at first. Now, just for some, I guess, scoring systems, you can see there's a number. Weiser's been granted 25. The maximum that you could get was 27. Basically, the way that it's been worked is the entire broadcast squad, there are 9 of us on the broadcast, got to give out 3 votes, first through third. The person placed in first by any person on the broadcast team gained 3 points, second gained 2, third place gained 1. So Weiser got given, I believe it was 7 out of 7 out of 9 first places with 2 second places, and then FMB or ZZK getting the 2 there, largely swapping around with FMB for third as well, and a couple of choices.
We're gonna reveal who the frauds were. Who did it, right? Okay, excellent.
Yeah, we're going to reveal that there are 7 frauds on the broadcast team, and that ZZK should have got first. I'm not showing my hand too early.
I think the criminal has just admitted his crime.
Where's the microscope? Get it out.
We'll open the floor. Weiser number 1. Let's give him a moment. Little claps around. Golf claps for Weiser.
Gigantic dodoy for Weiser number 1 for me, actually. Just see, there's no one who does it like this guy in this split, who's consistent in the way that he is. I think he had 1 bad week, right? Out of 9. There was only 1 week where we were like, he wasn't the best top laner this week. He's fallen off. And, the rest of it was like, well, he's obviously the best one out of everybody. So there's a reason why this one I think is the most, pretty clearly the most unanimous. It's from week 2 or 3. We were like,
so I guess I'll take it then, because I was one who put ZZK first.
You're a hater.
I had Weiser second. I had FMB third.
Very unwise.
I want to talk about ZZK because I think I stand by him being the best top laner in the league. I think that coming into split number 2, we had such a bad opinion of ZZK. The first half of the split was him rectifying that. If we took this split in isolation with no context of ZZK, if he'd have been imported from another region and we'd never seen him play, and ZZK played in this league, I think far more people would have had him as first place in our All-Pro. I think he spent the first half of this split changing our expectations of him from being, this guy was one of the worst top laners last split, to, okay, this guy's now actually decent. And then the second half of the split, we got to go, oh, he's actually really good. He's actually really, really good and deserving of this second All-Pro team. So in my eyes, if I looked at this split in isolation, without the context of split number 1, where he was actually really, really bad, relative to the rest of the top lane pool, I think ZZK, this split alone, is number 1 for me. He has bigger carry performances. I think that his decision-making in team fights is incredible. And I think that giving, in Brazil, a top laner who has the ability to play carries well is something I value highly. So that's my spiel for Weiser or for ZZK. Freudian slip, oopsie. I'm not going to expect you guys to turn around and be like, yeah, you're right. That's my argument.
For sure, no question.
Yeah.
I think from split 1 to 2. Well, there's maybe Nosferus, maybe, but I think it's ZZK.
Yeah.
It's basically INTZ is the answer for most improved, right? I think ZZK is the biggest, because we were like, this guy's there. He's a top laner. He's 7th or whatever we'd rank him, right?
We had him 9th, I think.
Yeah, we had him in C.
I'll go back. I'll go back and find out.
Yeah, it was low C or something. We did not value this guy super high, but now he is easily, conclusively top 2, and I think that. For me, he's had a couple of big bungles that stuck in my head. Maybe too much, maybe overweighing, and maybe I'm underweighing Weiser's off week in terms of how that affected my perception of Weiser. Once again, because Weiser has such a wealth of experience that I know he's always been really, really good. And now I think for me, it was the difference between Weiser is always top 2, arguably potentially even top 1 top laner. And now he's even better. How he's gotten that extra jump of being so far clear of the same people, of Robo, of FNB, the people he's been evenish with for so long. There was still room for him to be even better, was what really shocked me. And I think was that's why this guy, I think, gets it for me.
So I went back. no surprises in split number 1. Wiser was the top of S tier for us. ZZK was on his own at the bottom of D tier.
No,
we didn't put anybody else in D, and that's why I think that we had such bad expectations of ZZK coming into like. That's why I give the whole like.
The glow up.
If we didn't have the context of split 1, then everybody would be gassed on ZZK. But yeah, he has had a glow up. ZZK has literally turned it around from our theories from split number 1 to split number 2. Yeah, it's been the miracle.
For Wiser specifically, like I did look at ZZK. I didn't actually put Wiser as number 1 last split. So but this split, I think the reason why I had Wiser above ZZK was ZZK is a really good carry. I think we just look at carries. Sure, ZZK can contest Wiser, but Wiser to me has just been the all-rounder of the top lane. He can play tanks. We saw his Malphite come through. We saw utility with his Gragas, his Cassante. One of the few Cassantes who actually looked half decent, though he did still lose that game. But besides that, Wiser gets one of the least resources of top laners. ZZK looks good because he also gets resources. Wiser gets left up in an island to do whatever Wiser does. And he still has the highest goal difference, not just of the top lane, but of the entire league at 15 minutes.
That's crazy.
So to me, Wiser is just the one guy that you can just pick, put on any single team, and you'll instantly improve that team. Like you could take Wiser and put him in Pain, and Pain would be better.
I agree.
This is why just having different values is going to be different.
And at the very least, I love the fact that our top 2 are top laners that played 2 very different roles in their teams. Because I agree with like the carrier role ZZK was being invested in, and he was the one kind of taking over games. And there really like aren't almost any games except for maybe like the Kennen game that he won where it really felt like Wiser was taking over the game. It just felt like he was top, and whether either a team sent resources to try and put him down, and it never worked, right? He absorbed like every dive that people tried to send his way, or you left him on an island and he was just slowly chipping away at your top laner until they were kind of useless the rest of the game, and then Wiser was grouping with his team and making plays, and it just felt like you couldn't put this guy down. It didn't matter how many people you sent top.
Unless
everything that Wiser touches.
Okay.
So like the thing about him like playing carries, and I agree with RMC's point about kind of versatility, and that's something I personally value really highly, is a wide champ pool and being able to fill multiple roles. And then the question from that becomes, why should we make ZZK play tanks when he's so good at carries, right? And I guess it depends on what the coaching staff thinks. Like, do we need a versatile top laner who is role playing? No, we need a carry top laner who is going to draw pressure and is going to crush, and that allows Nosferus to be a role-playing mid laner. That allows like our bot lane to be a bit more flexible and a bit less resource heavy, right? So it's just like a difference in resource allocation, whereas Pain is funneling everything into B-Voice, so much money going down there. He's carrying late every game, and then they need Wiser to help that. So it's hard to say whether one is better or worse. I think it probably comes down to a difference in what the coaches and what the team decides is the best way to play the game. And the fact that ZZK was given Olaf in so many games is a crime, to be clear. That was not allowed, and the fact that that's happened is crazy. But, I want to see ZZK play Ornn and a Malphite a couple times just to see what happens, honestly, just because I'm interested to see if he is good at it, because right now it might just be that they're like, why would we bother doing this when we could just give Olaf's open? Again, let's just pick it,
I mean, he played it in 8 games.
Eight games.
With
like Robo
75%
didn't have
win
that many
rate,
Olaf games. FMB doesn't have that many Olaf games. ZZK next split. Okay, this was the last split of the 8 games of Olaf. That's for sure. Next split. As Rudin
we'll
said,
see if he sees it in playoffs at all.
Our expectations have been reset, and that Olaf is going on the bench. I think, along with Robo's, as it has been for so long.
Okay, so we touched on the top 2. I think I'm going to give like a small tidbit to FMB because he was so I'll go through the numbers again. We had 7 out of 9 people put him third, and of the 2 people that didn't put him third, it was one of them was Dia, who actually had him in second. So had a little bit of a boost from that, because like 9 points, 1 point for all of your thirds. It's not everybody put him third, but largely everybody had him third. Felt like FMB was a cut below, but a cut below the top 2, just a slight step above the top 3 or above the rest of the pack, and put himself third. And then we were talking about who else to put there. Top lane felt a little bit inconsistent this split. We've got a lot of good top laners, but all of them are inconsistent. RMC was the exception to the rule. and I'm going to let him talk on why he put his third place pick where they did.
Okay, so I think FNB is really, really good. But I don't think this split was the FN boss split. I think FNB is struggling on red a little bit because there are too many carries on that team. So he's not getting to pop off, and he's not getting the resources he needs. So I actually, for third, was struggling between Gigo or the guy who I actually put there, Kaboom's Lonely. I know. Okay, Kaboom, hear me out. Kaboom's really, really low down. I know they struggled this split immensely, but I actually thought Lonely was one of their best players. And what really impressed me was that despite being on a team that was struggling so much, Lonely still managed to be the third highest damage per minute of all top laners. And his goal difference at 15 was still net positive. He was actually higher than FNB. He was fourth out of all the top laners. So I thought Lonely did an amazing job. And I think if you take Lonely out of that team, put him on a better team, I think he is going to be in contention on that top three, top four sort of conversation that we're having right now. The other thing too is I thought FNB and Gigo had games where it felt like they overextended through some of the games a little bit, got dicier than it should have been. Did they win those games? For FNB, yes. For Gigo, not so much. But I don't think Lonely made those sort of missteps. So I actually thought Lonely performed better than either of them just here in the second split.
Yeah,
sounds to me like Natuno has competition for most elo held this split.
From this,
Lonely.
I don't think Natuno's making many people's top threes, honestly. This even because we got so many strong ADCs. So maybe if Lonely is up there, maybe he has an argument. Like I think when we talked about we put ZZK bottom of the bin in Indy, right? Last time. I think we were all relatively like okay on Lonely. We're like this
Lonely was
decent.
middle of A. So we had
right?
Lonely.
We knew
he
was decent.
He was fourth best. We ranked Lonely fourth best last split.
And I think his team is worse, and he is better than all of them. So I think that,
with like basically no jungler for half the split, right? Like Flawless was really, really struggling, and then all the jungle swaps still came through, and Lonely still performed, disregarding whatever was happening everywhere else in the map. So
I think it's fair. I probably put him like fifth. At a brief, just off the top of my head, he definitely.
I mean, Robo probably goes fourth for me. I'll be honest. Somehow,
you know my opinions on
Robo on the regular season stuff.
Bottom of D. No, I'm kidding. No, but so the thing about the FN boss thing is week 9 was FN boss time because they put him on Renekton and he just clapped everybody. And it might be again to follow this point through about ZZK. Just how are we using FNB? On a team with 900 carries, there's no room for FNB to be the FN boss. And he had some really good, like, Scion games. He had some decent kind of Cassante games and some real bad ones. But when he was on carries on Olaf, on Renekton, he was really good. And it's like... It's maybe we're just not using him, or maybe he's fine on other picks, right? He can play utility in other styles, but he's definitely best at carrying, man. This has always been the case. And when he got a chance to do that, we did see a bit of that old shine.
Yeah.
Okay, so to surmise, Wiser ranked first for our All-Pro top lane, ZZK ranked second for our All-Pro top lane, FNB ranked third for our All-Pro top lane, and all of those scorings very much agreed upon by the broadcast team. There was Wiser was clear first, ZZK clear second, FNB clear third. We're going to move on to the jungle role now, where we start to see a little bit more contention for top threes. There are going to be a few more honorable mentions that didn't quite make it into the top 3. There's a little bit more of a dicey position for top 1 and top 2. So, third place, Karaoke, scoring 8 points. Second place, Yarmpy, scoring 18 points. First All-Pro, Aegis, scoring 21. So, a lot closer at the top, 21 versus 18 points. You know, there's only 3 scoring points between that. Karaoke also with 8. It's a lower score for third than we got to see for top lane. I think that I guess the funny thing about this for me is that we have the same teams or near enough the same teams in the top 2. I forgot that I thought that we had INTZ Pain for both.
We do.
It is. It's different order, but the same 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the same 3
Okay.
teams.
Same 3 teams. Good. Okay. I'm not lying. Pain Gaming, INTZ, and Red all feature for the top 3 for top and jungle. Trajan, I'll come to you first. Aegis, number 1.
This was
we want to give a general... Yeah? Okay,
so
go for it.
I spent so long... I'm going to be honest, all of these were really hard. Except for Wiser, all of these were really, really hard. Top lane was probably the easiest.
No, but,
like,
So quick point, actually. all 4 of us on the podcast today had these 3 as our top 3. So in
Nice.
terms of
We're in alignment.
controversial points,
Okay.
we're actually all good.
As in the same order or just the top 3? Because
They're all in the top 3. I'm not sure about same order.
There's a Pain fan in the bottom left that might have something to say about karaoke. I don't know.
No, we
but,
actually all
No,
had them.
we had the same
We
order.
all had them same
no.
order.
Actually, no, that's
Yeah.
right. The Pain fans hate karaoke. I forgot. They actually think he's
Yeah,
the worst stronger in the league. They think he's the worst stronger
Do I
in the
need
league.
to go
for most of
karaoke?
those days.
Do I need to go put on my "Where's My Jungler? It's All His Fault" T-shirt for the karaoke conversation?
So I spent so long looking at these, and it came down to me looking once again at like pool diversity, at who has like some really bad games, who isn't putting bad games on, who's having carry performances. I ended up putting Aegis top lane, or Aegis number 1, I should say, Aegis top, because he's shown so much more depth than we've normally seen out of him. Normally, he is very much I'm playing like Wukong Sedge Vi, which this meta seemed perfect for him, right? To just play all 3 of those champs on repeat and just do what he does, take over the early game and affect the lanes. But he wasn't doing that. He was playing the Kindred, he was playing more Poppy, he was playing like more of a varied style, I guess. And it was weird because on a red roster like this is the perfect time to just play Wukong Sejuani every game. You have 3 carries in all 3 of your lanes, and now Aegis wants to be a carry as well.
Bridge.
Like it was a weird decision to put him on these picks, but I thought he looked really good on these new picks, and I respect the fact that he's obviously okay, right. Look, 07 Rel will, I will not defend the 07 Rel, but they also won that game, I'm pretty sure. So,
They did.
07 Power Spike Rel, I think, from Aegis. So, I think I had to put him at the top there. I had to give respect for Yampi for stepping up in such a big way and being really important to his team. He's a super valuable jungler for that roster. And then Karaoke, I thought just kind of was... The shine went off him a little bit. I don't know why, if he's being outshone or if he's not having as good of a split. But there's people below him as well that I was thinking very hard about, like Karaoke or Dasamis or, like Grell or someone else.
I think the jungle pool leveled up.
Yeah.
This split. Jungle pool definitely leveled up. Yampi, again, for context, was 9th for us last split in split number 1. But again, has made it into top 2. So the INTZ improvement's very palpable there. I think that Karaoke just got a little bit outclassed by a couple of junglers this time round, where last split he felt like the best of a worse bunch. This time round he feels like a middle of a better bunch. So I don't think Karaoke being 3rd is necessarily a detriment to him. It's more so an indictment of how strong the CBLOL has got for junglers.
Personally, for me, I voted Karaoke really high last split because he was the primary shot caller of that team.
Same.
Right? So when Pain shun, it was because Karaoke shun. Whereas this split, I do think, in a way, Pain has come together better. They don't need as much of a primary shot caller. So Karaoke can take that step back and focus on the mechanics, focus on the end gauge instead. Which we did see, his Sejuani games. He had some beautiful Tokyo Drift, some beautiful Glacial Prisons coming out of him, blind catching people. Absolutely beautiful, which is why, to me, he's 3rd. Because when I look at what Aegis and Yampi are doing, they have to do more for their teams. Aegis, for me, feels like the biggest babysitter right now. When Ridge just running off doing their own things, Aegis is
That's
like,
true.
okay, get back here, we're doing
You know?
Dragon. Yeah, exactly. And that's a really tough job. On such a strong team with such strong individuals, I think Aegis, the fact that he's managed to keep the team together, deserves number 1 because of the sheer amount of work he has to put in. Yampi, kind of similar. INTZ last split really struggled, but this split, I do think a lot of the early game success INTZ has had. They are now the 2nd best early game team is coming from Yampi, going to lanes, making things happen, going to the right lanes, to the right people to get the carries gold. And again, it just feels like he has to do a bit more than Karaoke does. Karaoke right now, to me, he's the benchmark. This is what a great jungler should look like. Doesn't have to be flashy, doesn't have to be fancy, but he gets the job done. So yeah, that's why I kind of ended that way. Everybody else, all the jungle pool was kind of weird. I think a lot of the junglers in CBLOL right now are struggling to try and figure out, do we want to play carry? Do we want to play utility? And if we play utility, how do we do it? Because I don't think all the teams have necessarily set up to properly have a utility jungler. So yeah, that's why kind of the others just went lower. But I do want to note that I think we had the most different votes in jungle position. Like the most different names got votes. This,
So yeah, I'll go through honorable mentions here. We've got players that got added to the jungle pool that didn't get made into top 3. Grell got 2 votes at 2nd, actually got no 3rd votes, but got 2 votes at 2nd.
I think that's bonkers.
there were some statements being thrown around. There were
Fraud
some
watch.
discussions.
We won't drop names, but fraud watch of the Grail
No,
conversation.
I think this is fine. Yeah, we can do that a little bit afterwards.
Oh, yeah, true.
Goot got an honorable mention at third, and Disarmus also got an honorable mention at third. So
Goot?
Goot, yes.
Goot got a third place vote.
No,
Goot
no,
did get a third place mention.
That's...
Do we need to have a quick conversation about the best early game jungler that didn't get any votes?
About AC?
AC?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to, but I will drop an honorable mention that I was genuinely impressed by AC. Of course, a lot of struggles on that team, and his split wasn't immaculate. But I'm looking forward to seeing AC develop further because I think he looked good this split. I do want to add a little context to the point that Trajan was making, talking about the depth of Aegis' champion pool, kind of what he brought to the table. His most played champ was Wukong at 4 games. He played then 3 games of Ivern, and then he played 8 different champions, either 2 or 1 times. And in a split where a majority of the split junglers and it felt like teams were more than happy to just handshake Sejuani and Maokai, he only played 3 games of those champs combined. So, I mean, all kinds of different things that Aegis was bringing to the table, and then you add onto the fact you guys talking about the holding all of the different leashes for his team and trying to keep all these carries in line. I thought his split was really impressive. Aegis looked really damn good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so again to sum up for jungle, I feel like we've made it to a natural end of this role. Karaoke in third with 8 points, Yampi in second with 18 points, Aegis in first with 21 points. We will now move on to the mid lane, where it does start to get a lot closer for our All-Pro voting. In third place, we have House with 15 points. And you'll note this is a lot higher than the other teams, other third places, because House may have been placed a lot higher in certain people's rankings than certain other people's rankings. Dinkedo just 1 point higher with 16 in second. And our first team All-Pro mid laner with 19 points, a little gap, but it is a little gap, was Tinones with 19 points. So Loud making their first appearance in our top 3. The same for Fluxu as well, with House, and then Dinkedo keeping Pain Gaming in for all of them so far. Gents, this was a lot closer ran thing. We have 4 point split between first and third. RMC will come to you first of all. General congratulations, thoughts, any homages that you want to point out?
I think the mid pool, I said this last split as well, I think this year as a whole the mid pool has been really, really tight. Like there's a lot of really good players. Even though Tinones came in number 1, I don't think the gap is actually that wide between, like, say, Tinones and even like the 5th or 6th place mid lane.
So this is an interesting point, because it's funny you mentioned that. I went and had a look and saw who actually got votes. We only had 5 mid laners total get any votes at all. For the most part, only 5 mid laners got votes, period, in the top 3. And there were only 3 instances where one of these top 3 weren't picked. So basically, across the 9 members of broadcast team, 6 of us had these 3, and the other 3 of them had 2 of the top 3, and then 1 exception to that rule. So it was actually generally well perceived among our team that these were the top 3. The organization of them within the top 3 was where it got a lot more discussed, let's say.
Yeah, but I'd still stand by the fact that I think even if you put in like anybody but those top 3 players, there's a case to be made for them. And I think it says a lot that these 3 have stood out. And I think all of them have their own individual strengths. And I think it's kind of what we're expecting, right? Like House had some of the flashiest plays of all the mid laners. Like his Azir plays, like those are still top 5 modes of the entire split. Dinkedo, the deathless streak he had, was it 4 games with no deaths? Like he was absolutely bonkers. And his Ahri has improved leagues and bounds. Tinones, I'm actually a little bit surprised we didn't see more Tinones first place votes. I actually expected him to get more than 20 points because this guy has been the primary carry for Loud throughout a lot the season.
I disagree. Carry on.
Tinones was there. I'm not saying he ended the biggest carry, but I do think for most of the split, he's been the biggest carry for this team. When they were struggling, it was Tinones. So I think it makes sense. The big question is just what order we wanted to see them in. I think that comes down
Tinones Jace would like to have a conversation.
Like I said, not at the end.
Why?
Yeah.
He played let's be clear, he played a Jace game at the beginning of the split.
And a Jace game at the
Yeah,
end.
he
And I
lost
didn't
that
like
one.
either of them. So like, I don't know what it is.
It's just CBLOL Jace doesn't hit right, man. Like,
Dude, where's the House Jace? House was always good at Jace. Where's the
House
Envy
Jace
Jace?
was good.
House
good
knows
Jaces.
better. He knows this is not
So-
the Jace time.
Trajan just pretend this is like a game show where Trajan said the trigger word.
Yeah.
Envy
Yeah.
had 0 all-pro votes
0.
from anybody on our broadcast team. Nobody put Envy in the top 3. And this is where I want to harp onto RMC's point that
Okay.
any of the top, not like to add on to your point, that any of the teams that it's no surprise that we've got these top 3, but it is a surprise that we don't see more variation as to who got votes. I think the fact that Envy didn't get a single vote is not representative of how good Envy has been.
Yeah.
I think if anything, it is just the clearest thing that he is top 4 mid laners, but just not quite top 3 is kind of how we're feeling.
I mean, it felt
I
to me
think so.
like Envy just generally had like a relatively quiet split. Like not bad, but he wasn't standing out in any big ways. The big game that stands out to me was like his Aatrox game, where he gets forced to like spend both of his summoners at level 1. His jungler dies. It looks like he's about to get put in the dumpster in a Tristana matchup that we were thinking might be really rough for him. And then he absolutely goes off and takes over the game. But like other than that, there really weren't a lot of standout Envy performances, and maybe part of that comes from I think he only picked Vex once. We know that's a big playmaking pick for him. Yeah, but like I think Envy just had like kind of in a similar vein to Dinkato, where he was good and he was kind of the benchmark, but he wasn't super flashy. Whereas I think if you look at Tino's, Dinkato, and House, all 3 of these players had multiple really big games for their teams and were kind of taking over. Or you look at Dinkato and it's just like, this dude was just lights out with his Ahri. It was just so good. It was so reliable every single game. And I just think it's a different conversation about the way that Envy played the split and the kind of role he had to fill for Red.
Thinking about first spot, I just wonder if the people who voted Dinkato as first, whether they'd vote for, say, like Envy or Tuts, or no, like Envy as like 4th. And then those who voted for maybe House might vote people like Tuts or who's another playmaking mid
Like
laner?
what they value from mid
Grevnar.
laners, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And then if you voted like maybe Tino's first, you might vote for Lava 4th, because it feels like, again, they're very similar playstyles and the gap isn't that wide. I think it's a lot of it's just what people kind of valued. More than anything else.
I think I don't know if I said this on a previous podcast, but like I think mid for me is the role where you could sub so many of these players into different teams and they'd be so fine with that. They wouldn't lose anything. They might have a slightly different mid laner, but they would not lose in terms of value on that team. I think that Nosferus, especially in the latter second round robin, deserves a shout out to be 4th or 5th maybe. Envy, I think I maybe put just above him because he's had the Vex and the Aatrox. There is that little bit of depth of pool there. There's that little bit of consistency. Tuts after week 3, we were like, this guy is like top 3 right now. This guy is so good leading like
he was an early MVP
players.
Candidate.
Yeah, and he had like such like he was clearly leading the charge and playmaking and shot calling for that team so many times. So that's why I'm surprised there was only 5. There should have been like 7 names on that list getting votes for sure, minimum.
Okay, so I want to do the honorable mentions for players that got votes but weren't in the top 3, and then I also want to dive a little bit more into these into these mid laners specifically, so we can tell people why they got these top 3 votes. So the honorable mentions, we had a couple of lava votes. So we had 2 people, RMC being one of them, and Yeso being the other, who had lava at 3rd. And then we also had a Nosferus 2nd vote from Axe. So again, we can look at that a little bit later. So those are like your 2 honorable mentions that got put in the top 3, but didn't end up getting into the top 3 overall. I think that as we dive into, we can just go a little bit what each of these mid laners provided to either of their teams. I'm going to give Dinkato to RMC because I feel like that's most appropriate. I'll give House to Trajan because that's also most appropriate. And Yeso, you get top 1. So you get an easy job. RMC, we'll go to you first.
Can I just say, I actually find it really funny. I'm the Pain fan. I didn't have Tinkedo as number one. Trajan is the Fluxu fan, and he did not have House. He's the House fan, and he did not have House.
Impartial voting. You love to see
it's
it.
harsh
Yeah.
realities for us to split RMC. It's harsh realities for us right now.
It is.
And me as well when we get to support as well.
Yeah, we have to be objective for our teams. Yeah, I think Tinkedo, he's definitely deserving of top two, unquestionably. He's been such a big force for his team. And it's also, he's a stabilizing force for Pain. Like, he and Weiser, the solo lanes for Pain have been so stable, and you can bet on them every time, which is what allows B-Boy to kind of scale up. What's super impressive for me for Dinkedo is in addition to the stability he brings, he's gotten so much better. His Ari charms are actually now deadly. Now, I am not an Ari fan. I actually don't like Ari in the current meta, and we keep seeing her blinded and picked. Dinkedo makes her look really good, though. And this isn't even damage Ari. He's not building, Ludens. He's not actually building right away. Like, I'm trying to think what
he's a Neverfrost Banshee's abuser, and we don't
yeah,
give him
exactly
points for that.
Exactly. We don't want to Trajan, but we have to, because he's the one
Yeah.
guy who's actually pulling it off, and he's putting out damage in these fights despite building defensive items. And that's why I think Dinkedo is just right now, it feels like a cut above, because of that sort of stability and the way he can still bring so much to the team. Now, in addition to that, of course, there is still the champion pool. He can still play other things. His Jace, that last game of the split, I did not like it in terms of the composition or the fact that they're running a poke comp, but Dinkedo actually executed well. He won lane, and he was a big part of the later game. So when you've got a mid laner who can play the CBLOL Jace and still win with it, I think that deserves respect.
I'm
Okay,
surprised
yeah,
we
so
didn't see
you're up.
any Annie. Just super quick before we move on to him. Like, his Annie at the
Yeah.
end of Split 1 was like insane in
Yeah.
playoffs. It was so massive, and Annie was so good, and we just didn't see any Dinkedo Annie, and I was surprised by that. I was like, I felt this would be good for him, but I mean, and now we're done with it, right? People are bored with Annie, so I guess
We've
we
moved
won't-
He was ahead of the curve. You just knew. He was practicing
They
on this
have-
already.
Sure.
They have definitely moved on.
the curve,
Yeah,
they are.
Tinons. Tinons, I mean, look, if you've watched CBLOL before, you kind of know what Tinons brings to the table. I think the really interesting when you talk about him this split is that, and while I know he has been like a primary carry for his team in the past, if you look at him over this kind of championship run that they have had over the prior two splits and then this split, the prior two splits, he really wasn't that primary carry. You either had Brunsey or Root in the bottom lane, and you had Robo topside. Yeah. So you have these two lanes that can take over the game, and it really felt like, and it shows up with the picks, lots of things like Lysandra and Swain like that, where you do bring a lot of damage to the table, but Tinons wasn't required to carry. He was really just being kind of like you're talking about Dinkedo, that stabilizing force in the mid lane, keeping things close, and then he was playmaking in a lot of mid game and late game team fights. But Tinons, this split, considering how, I mean, Robo was a mess for a majority of this split, it felt like Tinons had to step up here a little bit. He brought a super deep champion pool. He played over 10 champions this split. And a bunch of things that are, we kind of haven't seen from him quite as much as of late. I thought his LeBlanc was really good. He brought out the Syndra, which looked great, which ultimately ended up being his most played champion. Tito stepped to the forefront when some other parts of his team were struggling, particularly Croc and Robo, and he did a wonderful job. And this just adds an extra element to Loud when it comes to best of fives, that now you have to worry about, oh no, do we have to try and put Tinons in a hole in terms of our bans in Champion Select, and I think it's going to make Loud even harder to beat come playoff time.
Yeah, and interesting to note as well, Tinons and Dinkedo in draft specifically fulfill opposite roles. Tinons has the highest counter pick rate of all mid laners, and he makes it work. Whenever he slams that Swain, it's guaranteed winner. Like, he literally has not lost on that pick because he knows how to counter pick with it. And then you got Dinkedo, who's kind of the opposite, who has to keep first picking stuff. That's why he picks Ari, Tristana, Jace. These are sort of the blind pickable champions. So they're kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum here.
Yeah.
Okay, Trajan, give me the Howl speech.
So this is the harsh reality, right? I was looking at it and I was like, last split, I was like, fighting Howl's like, no, he is best. He is the best mid laner. Even though Fluxu bombed out of 5th, he's just the best. You can't ignore it. And now I just can't. I can't say that. I can't lie to you all and say that's the case, right? Is he, on his day, the most impactful mid laner in the league? Yes, by a factor of about 5, because he's just so able to control a game from lane through to mid game with these picks like the Azir. But how can you have that bad of a game on Ari, bro? Like, we know you have hands. We know they're there. I've
Oh.
seen the hands, and yet you have an Ari game where you miss this many charms. Like, this is just... He's not putting the consistency up that he's had before. He's not putting the statistical dominance that he had up before. Some of that is the picks and the style that coming into 2023, it was not gapping and CSD and damage per minuting on Victor every game. It was a Kali every game, and now it's Azir. Look, man. Okay. So for everyone, for the audio listeners' benefit, RMC is questioning the depth of House's champion pool, to summarize, right? The Azir is amazing, the LeBlanc is great. But my question for the third, the answer is Nico, by the way, is that third pick. But
Okay, that's fair. I forgot about that.
so it's the highs are still there, but the lows are deeper than they have been before. And I don't know necessarily why that is, but there are games where he is somewhat invisible, possibly even a liability. And if you're going to give the man Ari, you can't afford to just do nothing. Like, on this team, where top lane is never going to be a carry without Rumble, realistically, the best way to use House... The best way to use House is to give him a carry, right? I don't want to run too long here. I'll wrap this up. But, it's... In the middle of this split, I said I thought Fluxu had the clearest identity of any team. House is carrying, Brunsey is carrying, Desamus is bridging, the other two are supporting, right? And we just stopped doing it after a while. We didn't stick to that identity, and I think they suffered for that, and they need to fix it for playoffs and give House the tools to carry them through a series. Otherwise, this VKS game could get really sketchy.
So, and I think that as much as that was... I think that's why he's third of these top three.
Yeah.
As in terms of obviously how impactful he is in a game, we've seen him do that, and that's why he's gotten so much good graces to be third for our All Pro. And again, I think I had him first because I've seen him on his highs.
Yeah.
And I don't want to disagree with anything you've said because I think everything's right there. But I do think that on a good day, House performs better than any of these other mid laners,
True.
which is why I put him at first. And
Easily true.
again, it's just different criteria for the talent team, and that's why it's good to have such a nice range of people that we can pull from. So to wrap up mid lane then, House came in our third place at 15 points, Dinkedo 16 points at second, Tinones first with 19 points, a 4-point spread between third and first. Now, as we move into the AD carry, the margin gets even thinner. Our third All-Pro AD carry spot goes to Root. Second All-Pro AD carry goes to Bvoy. First All-Pro goes to Brunsey. Point scores, Brunsey 17, Bvoy 16, Root 14. So a 3-point spread between first and third. And I want to quickly mention here as well, there is an elephant in the room. There is one notable absence, I feel like, from this list that people are going to be upset about. Titan didn't make it into our top three. After all of the insane gas we've been giving him, split long, and the MVP discussions, when it came down to brass taxes, Titan got given 5 mentions in the top 3, in fairness. But overall, his points aggregate came to 7, I think. So half of what Root got. So Titan was mentioned a few times, but not enough to put him in the top 3. And those were the only 4 AD carries that got mentioned.
The only 4.
What
really.
actually happened?
No Ninja Kiwi, not a single one.
I was
man.
blown away that Titan didn't make top 3. I couldn't believe that.
Bro, survive longer than 4 levels in bot lane and we'll talk again, okay? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, let's be clear. Like nobody's ever gassing him for his laning phase, right?
No.
It's his
Certainly
late
not.
game. You know, it's his playmaking potential, and like, you know, as I've said many times on broadcast, you know, Titan giveth, Titan taketh away for sure. It's not like it's impeccable, but like, you want to talk about high highs. This is a dude that has high highs and can make these incredible plays to, you know, win games for your team. And I was just surprised.
I think I want to make 2 points here. One is that Titan got the highest amount of points outside of the top 3 of anybody in any role. So he was like the closest to getting into the top 3 of any of our players that didn't make it from any other role. But also the maybe most valid comparison I have here is Grell. If I say that and people immediately start nodding, then I'm happy. But if not, I'm going to have to sell you, and that's fine. That
I get it
Titan,
on paper. I
on
don't
paper,
know.
right?
Yeah.
Is that
So you're
the
gonna tell
reason
us
I
you're
didn't
right.
have Titan in his top 3 is for the same reason I didn't have Grell in my top 3, and that is because yes, when they are on their highs, I think they could very well be potentially the best in the league. But how frequently I saw them hit their high versus how frequently they were too low to be serviceable for the skill of the league was too. It was too high. I couldn't see them at their high highs enough for me to put them in the top 3 versus the other AD carries, which I put in my top 3. All 3 of these ADs I mentioned here, all 3 of the AD carries in All Pro, I put in my top 3. I didn't have Titan in my top 3 at all because he just wasn't consistent enough. And that comes down to his laning phase. It's a very important part of the game for an AD carry. You can lose lane very quickly if you misstep once. And Titan was getting a few too many games where I was just like, no. And despite the fact that he ended up, having game-saving plays time and time again, I came around on the fact that he was the person that put his team
How
there.
did we get there?
Occasionally.
Why are we defending our Nexus from Liberty? Titan. Let me ask you this: how did we reach this point? These schoolboy errors, I just can't. That we don't see of any of those top 3. Maybe a little bit more out of Brunsey than the other 2, I would say. But I think Brunsey comes closer to the Titan level of clutching than the other 2, and has less of the absolute just. This is a word I've used so many times to split. Boneheaded moves from Titan that I see in some of these lanes that I can't forgive, when it's the 4th, 5th, 6th time in a row that is happening,
That's
Go ahead, RMC.
I was just going to say, I think part of the reason why I had Titan up there is also because of the meta shift. If this was still the hyper carry meta, 100% agree. You can't make those mistakes. But because it's Kai'Sa, I do feel like that's part and parcel of the champion. And so it's like,
I love that you, as the pain, as the
that.
B-boy statistical monster, also have room in your heart for Titans like chaos and nonsense. I just love the duality.
Brother, I'm a CBLOL caster, man. I love CBLOL because of this.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, so.
I do want to say, and I think it's important to point this out, and I think Rudude would largely agree with me that, like, I hear what you're saying, but I think it is important to point out that I think Grell not only more consistently, but more drastically nuked his team's games this split than Titan did. And I think that is important to point out. Like, when you lay it out in, like, divorce of the statistics, I think very similar players, but in terms of when you talk about their play this split, Grell was worse, was more of an anchor to his team than Titan was. But I think it is, and I do agree, it definitely stands out big time when Titan is making those blunders, is making those boneheaded plays, as Trajan points out, that put his team in compromising positions, especially because he was the one, when you talk about this team and the wealth of carries, Titan was the one most consistently getting resources and being invested in because of the meta and the way that they decided to play this split. And that makes it, more important that you are making the right plays.
But he also got the most MVPs. With Aegis.
I was going to say Aegis as well. Yeah, the leash holder got a lot of them as well.
A little too long.
Jojo's not there to hold the leash anymore. Someone's got to grab it. Frosty's not up to the task quite yet.
I want to pass this, I think, to Trajan, because maybe somebody who surprisingly made it into the top 3 but somehow kind of snuck in here is Root. I took a lot of time up talking about why Titan wasn't in. I'm going to pass it to Trajan because we had the same voting for the top 3. I'm hoping we share similar sentiments about why Root made it in.
Can I just ask a question about Root before I hand it to Trajan? This is a question.
Yeah.
For the first All-Pro team, Root actually ended up with 4 votes compared to B-Boy, who only had 1. And still B-Boy beat him. So my question is, why is Root getting more first All Pros and still not beating Bevo in the standings? Not that he should, but why?
So I think for Root, it really depends on how people are watching Loud games and what they attribute Loud wins to a lot of the time. Because Tinons, we've talked about Tinons, he's first. Everyone can see that Tinons is a very pivotal player for that team, especially more so now this split because he has had to put the carry pants on more as opposed to setting up Root and Robo in those pants, as he has done before. So I think that Root, when I was looking at some of these measures that I've mentioned before in terms of diversity of champion pool, lack of complete nonsense stinker games, I don't know if Root had a single bad game in this split, even in their first
Say it
3
again.
losses, right?
People at the back.
When the Loud team was asleep from MSI, that was not Root's bad. Root was not the one dragging the
I'm going to take it quickly.
Yeah, take it away. We're aligned here.
So our entire narrative for the first sort of half of the season for Loud was literally we worked our way up the map as Loud woke up. The first 3 losses, we were like, Tino's is absent. None of us were saying Root was not playing well. Root was just by far and away the consistent AD. I don't think any of us gave him any gas throughout really the entire split, other than the fact that he's not the one actively losing his team games, which is not as high praise as he should have been getting. And I think when we look at team fights as well, he was performing better. The thing that I just think about the most is when I saw the Loud versus Pain Gaming match in round robin 2, Loud won, and it was team fight versus team fight. It was AD carry versus it was AD versus AD. B-Boy didn't have the source.
Yeah,
Root did.
He didn't.
And
he was
and
dry.
that
bone dry.
I'm not saying it was the biggest reason that I put Root there, but that was something that was in my head always. Like, I can't give B-Boy first over Root when I put them in the same. And I know this isn't the same because League of Legends is very variable, game to game, comp to comp, blah blah blah. 5v5 versus 5v5. Root came out on top versus B-Boy.
B-Boy is being robbed again. Literally, if you just, oh my god, I hate how Loud versus Pain always ends up in favor of Loud, because you look at every other game, you look at their stats across like every other game, and B-Boy actually beats Root. Didn't have a bad game either. Even that game they lost to Root wasn't on B-Boy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think you could just look
I
at that
think
and say B-Void didn't have the sauce and Root did. I think
much
much more happened in
couple
that
of
game.
games where B-Boy, I would class them as bad games. One of them, a recent one that we can talk about, is the Fluxu game. Okay, there is one fight where B-Boy did not get rinsed and minced, and this was the fight that turned the game and won Pain that game, right? It was at Dragon Pit, and the only reason B-Boy lived and got a massive fight was because Tay literally misplayed. He said it on the interview, and you can see it in the replay. He goes on to Skasante and then ults Sejuani instead of Aphelios. Aphelios flashes away, gets to survive, and kills everybody. That was a game where B-Boy did nothing except die in team fights, except the one fight where they won the game because Fluxu was already behind. So there are games where B-Boy does not perform, in my opinion. Whereas I don't. I'd argue
he still beat Brunsey in lane that game. Brunsey was still down CS.
We're not talking about Brunsey. We're not talking about Brunsey. Okay, we're talking about Root. Leaving aside the fact that Brunsey is above both of them in our total thing, right? We're not.
Me and Trajan specifically have Brunsey below the other two.
Yes.
So,
okay. We're talking about Root, and in that regard, I think Root has just been. I don't know. He's put one foot wrong in this whole split, and it's because his team drafted in Varus, which we know is a dog shit Root pick. You don't give Root Varus. We knew this in split 1. He can't play this champion. Okay, I'm putting Belzy on trial for that one. But every single other game was really, really solid. Even the Varus game wasn't him being necessarily misplaying and throwing the game. I think Root just didn't have a stinker all game, all series long, and he also has these high moments in the team fights and the Sivir 1v1, which
kill.
I don't want to look. Kai'Sa pentakills are fake in the same way Zeri pentakills are fake. All right, this is. Just
I don't see Root play. I don't see
Raven's got one. Raven's got a Kai'Sa pentakill, bro. Everyone get a Kai'Sa pentakill.
You can't. There were only 2. You can't you can't detract B-Voice pentakill just because it can't mean that much because Raven's the only one that had one. Like, get out of here.
B-Voice pentakill was better than Raven's as well, to be clear. In the tape, B-Voice pentakill was actually pretty good.
The Void Seeker snipe was clean.
Like the Root level 1 Sivir kill was. It's not actually like indicative of him being an insanely good carry, but it was really funny. So
yeah.
Ninja Kiwi goes straight to jail for that first.
I love that was on Ninja Kiwi too. He's the original Sivir player in CBLOL.
Dude,
I know.
He steps up DJ, so I was like, okay.
Well, Root Sivir's been godlike since split 1. Yeah.
We have 2 other people on the desk. We have 2 other people that we haven't gassed up, and they actually placed higher in these all-pro votings. RMC, I'm going to give you your time in the sun with B-Boy. Tell me why he should have been number 1. There was 1 point between B-Boy and Brunsey, so it's very close, and then so you can do number 1 as well for Brunsey.
B-Boy statistically is just one of the best AD carries. I agree Brunsey is up there for damage, but in terms of just positioning, B-Boy is better. And I do think that B-Boy has the advantage of having a team that doesn't need him to pop off. But boy, can he pop off. He's only the second pentakill in CBLOL all split long. No other AD carry besides Raven can say that. And B-Boy actually had to win that fight. They picked a poke composition into team fight comp, Ping team fought into them, lost a lot of that fight, and B-Boy had to carry the back end of it. He's got the least deaths in the league as well. So B-Boy's positioning is incredibly good. In terms of gold difference at 15, B-Boy's the best laning AD carry. So it really does feel like almost across the board, statistically, B-Boy's the biggest monster. And this isn't the first split he's done that. He did that last split as well.
A bit of laning leads, honestly, for bot lane, it comes down to support, brother.
I think
playing bot lane, yeah.
Sure.
We can carry on.
Yeah. Understandable. We can give that to the likes of ProDelta as well. I do think it's a group effort, and I think a lot of times we'll see that the AD carries we vote have good supports behind them. That's
weird.
But if we're looking at, say, like damage as well, because to me the most important thing for AD carries is your GPM. Can you pump it out when it matters? The only person above B-Boy is Brunsey, and if you look at their teams, as you mentioned, Ty has been weak sided all split long, so Brunsey has to put out more damage to compensate for that. B-Boy's got Wiser in the top lane. Like, Wiser's pumping out damage.
He's weak-sided, to be clear. He's just 1v2.
Weak-side
Wiser is weak-sided. Well. He's just crushing everyone 1v2. He's not getting resources. He's just better than Tay. Like,
Wiser makes his own strong side. I refuse to call Wiser weak side when he makes his own strong side.
No, Wiser is definitely weak side.
And if you look at the damage per minute between Brunsey and B-Boy, the difference is not that big. It's 788 versus 866. So
who's first?
Brunsey's higher. Oh, but as we mentioned, because of the way his team operates, he has to be the big damage team fights, whereas B-Boy is still competing against his own top laner and mid laner. So when I put all that together, I do think B-Boy is actually statistically the best AD carry bar none. The only problem for B-Boy is the eye test, because his team is too damn good. Because there are too many carries in that team. If you put B-Boy where Brunsey is, I think B-Boy would actually elevate Fluxy.
Most and you said least deaths, also most kills. Yes, and highest KDA by a significant margin. So his stats are impeccable. And his early game is unassailable. Like and there are other good early game AD carries, but like B-Boy is head and shoulders above the rest of the league in terms of his early game play. And I agree, credit to ProDelta on that front.
By eye test than B-Boy, in my opinion.
By eye test, but not by statistics. And by the way, I also want to add for ProDelta specifically, ProDelta has been absolutely amazing coming into the split. This is his first full split as a starter, but he is still new. And if you watch Inside the Rift, you'll see that a lot of it is also B-Boy kind of coaching ProDelta as well, what they need to do. So considering he had to do that to start the split and has been so dominant, like that has just been amazing to me, this paintball lane.
So tell me why Brunsey is our actual all-pro first team AD carry.
Because it's, at times it's Brunsey and 4 wards and they still win games. Like, look, and I'm Trajan, this might sting. I know you're the Fluxu guy. This team is so weird at times, and so often it'll just come down to like the entire team is inting, and then you've got Brunsey on something like a Jinx who is trying to fight these team fights on his own. You want to talk about like really good positioning? Brunsey's got that in spades. I think Trajan does make a really good argument that I do agree that B-Boy is statistically the better laner, but I think Brunsey's laning is incredible, and you'd be hard, like you wouldn't pick anybody else in this league to be that late game carry for your team in team fights than Brunsey. This guy is incredible. He showed it all split long. And while I think he doesn't have the same kind of clean record that Trajan mentioned about Root, where it felt like Root really didn't have a bad game to split, and I think Brunsey had a couple, but his highs were so damn high all split long and so consistent. I mean, he's the best AD carry in Brazil, and he has really taken over. And it's like Titan's still incredible, and I think we're still going to get great things from him. But I think we're in the era of Brunsey, and I think he stamped that pretty officially here this split.
Okay, I'm gonna grab this before anybody else goes.
Yeah,
I feel like we could go around in circles and have this discussion for hours on end. So I'm gonna nip it in the bud. I'm gonna let what Yesu has just said fly because he represents the voice of the majority of the CBLOL English broadcast.
You're welcome.
Brunsey placed first. B-Boy placed second. Root placed third. Those are your. I think that this adds to the point that you can make an argument for any of these three to be first, and they're all. It's not going to change any of our opinions onto who should have gone first. We all have our own opinions. This is again why we've done this sort of mean scoring, I suppose, for who gets first. And across the majority of our talent team, Brunsey has proven himself to be the better AD carry and gets himself first All-Pro. Is everybody happy?
Pain Gaming just lives in second RMC. They're just in the rightful
I know
place.
that's what stings, Trish.
Every time.
It's like if you look at the first All-Pro, it's like all Root or Brunsey, and then B-Boy comes in second. Like in the second, he's just there all across. That's what stings to me the most. It's like statistically he beats both Root and Brunsey in certain categories, but it's like just the people who voted either way just didn't value those particular things at that time. So it's just like.
Okay, so to conclude AD carry, Brunsey in first with 17 points. This is the lowest score of any first All-Pro player for any role, just again showing the depth with which the AD carry pool was discussed. B-Boy in second with 16 points, one below Brunsey. Root in third place with 14 points in third. We're going to move on to those crucial pairings, and a lot of our conversations will now start to become full circle. Because interestingly enough, none of the teams change. The players just do slightly switch positioning a little bit. So in third place for our All-Pro support, we have Jojo. In second place for our All-Pro support, we have Pro Delta. And in first, we have Seos. Now, if you are watching the video here, you will see the support was the closest role, and we actually had a tie in points. So I'm going to explain our metrics a little bit again. Just joining and skipped the support section for whatever reason. The talent team of 9 people voted for their top 3. Place number 1 scored 3 points. If you placed them number 2, that player scored 2 points. If you placed them third, they scored 1 point. So Seos and Pro Delta actually tied for 22 points here, meaning on average, we value them the same. The way we have determined the tiebreaker has been that Seos got the most number 1 votes. So more people valued Seos as the best support in the league versus Pro Delta. The tiebreaker was Seos scored 5 first team All-Pro votes. Pro Delta scored 4 first team All-Pro votes. So Seos wins out on that tiebreaker and is our first team support.
By 1 vote as well.
That all being said,
place. It's so close.
1 first place. A pretty clear top 2. Seos and Pro Delta have been there. And feels a little similar to the jungle discussion we had. Jojo came in at third. I'm going to do honorable mentions for support because there's only one, and it was Nia. Nia got an extra vote in at third. So they're representing his vote, I believe, on the bottom right. So Nia got 1 third place vote, but again, the top 3 very much unanimously the top 3. Okay. I've spieled, I've explained everything.
No Zai kind of hurts. I agree with it. I didn't vote for him, but it kind of hurts, right? Like he was rookie of the split for us last time, and with the main broadcast, the Portuguese broadcast as well, had him rookie of the split. And I think it's just tough because he's still trying to do his thing on a Furia roster. They just couldn't find their groove through a split, and we saw that Pike game. He's still in there. Zai is still in there. And maybe on a more stable setup, I think if he was not necessarily Los Grandes, but on a higher position team, we could have seen Zai break into that one. But I think it's I hope we do keep getting to see more of him, and I hope he sticks around because there's still so much potential in that player. But I think, like I say, this top 3 I think is pretty clear cut. Nia definitely deserves some recognition, but I think it's clear.
Yeah.
I'm gonna monologue a little bit, and we'll see if it opens a discussion for the rest of it. So this entire split long, I've been championing Seos as like the hailing of Lucy of any other previous support from Brazilian times gone by. I actually put Seos second for this All-Pro voting. I had Pro Delta as number 1.
Traitorous.
And
the last hurdle.
I know, and I'm not gonna back down from either of my discussion points because I think that again, consistency through the CBLOL. I still think Seos is definitely championing that discussion to be one of the best CBLOL supports of all time. And the Pro Delta came into this split specifically, and this is where again a bit of my ZZK point values comes through. Where if we look at this split in isolation, which is kind of what we have to do. Pro Delta has been the best support. I think that the reason Seos got given so many first team All-Pro votes is because of how strong people's opinions of Seos were coming from MSI. So he got a little bit of good graces coming from that to begin with. And I think that, like I say, in isolation, Pro Delta for me feels like the best support on paying in the league, and that's why I had him over Seos.
Okay. I'm gonna be honest. I have Pro Delta and Seos. Like I put Seos over Pro Delta, but honestly, they were neck and neck for me. It came down to just straight stats when I looked at those two, and Seos just barely edged out over Pro Delta. Slightly higher KDA, slightly less deaths. The assists were pretty much the same. The KP was like 1% higher for Seos. So that was the tiebreaker for me. It was literally just down to these.
So all three of you had Seos first. So you guys can chat and figure out why you had Seos.
So as you say, like there's a lot of maybe some additional good graces were gained from MSI, and that is not entirely dissimilar to the reason I picked Seos, is that I can't split these two in terms of performance as a support in this split, but this is who is the best in that position. And when they're both the same, more or less by eye test, as RMC says, basically by stats as well, like in a reasonable material margin, there is a very slight edge for Seos, but it's so close as to be like not barely even considerable, right? So you just need a reason to break that tie. And for me, the tiebreaker is not the stats. The tiebreaker is the fact that I've seen so much more of Seos that I have faith to know. I know he's a godlike support. I believe he is the greatest support that has ever come out of Brazil. He's the greatest of all time in that role for me. And from Pro Delta, we've got one split of data. It was great data. The guy is really, really good. But if I have to pick one of these two guys, I'm taking Seos because I just have more faith in him, as I know how much longevity he has had. I know how much consistency he has over a longer period of time. Whereas Pro Delta, he's on Pain. He's on a really, really strong Pain roster. He's had, as RMC said, a lot of help from B-Boy. And I don't know if this necessarily continues forever. Whereas for Seos, I've seen enough that I believe he is just that good down to his bones. So it's basically a tiebreaker. As we can see, Seos got here on a tiebreaker, 4 first places to 4, the most marginal of margins. And for me, it was an arbitrary margin as well to put Seos above.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there, and I think it also is important to note when you're having this conversation to talk about, I think Trajan made a good point, being curious about, what happens with Zai because of how good he was last split. And it is important to note that like support is one of those roles that suffers the most on a team that is struggling. And that is only further emphasized in a meta where you're playing engaged supports, right? When things like Rel and Alistar and other things like that are playing, it only further emphasizes how bad you look when your team is not playing well. And I think that's a big reason why, I think if you look at the first round robin, Zai's probably in your conversation for top 3 in terms of all pro voting, but the team fell off a cliff at the halfway mark, and that's that one pipe game at the end is unfortunately nowhere near enough to make up for that. But in the end, I'm largely with Trajan here. I think Pro Delta was incredibly impressive this split. A guy coming in with, if memory serves, I think 4 games of experience on Furia a few years ago prior to the split, so it is really a true rookie debut here. And he was incredible, but I agree. And I think it's important to point out when you talk about the way that Root, as you said, Loud leveled up from like bottom to top. Seos is part of that. He and Root looked really solid at the start of the split. They came in not really missing a beat. I don't know that I would say that Seos didn't have a single bad game in the way that we talk about Root, but I thought Seos was really damn good all throughout and continues to be a big reason why Loud is so successful.
All right.
Can I just say as well? It's kind of funny because I like it this way because now if we look at our all-star, our all-pro team starting me, B-Boy and Pro Delta are together again on the second string.
United
on the first
again.
team. It's reuniting Brunsey and Seos from last split mode. So kind of works out that way.
It fits the break.
And how about the fact that Pain shows up in our
second
top 3 or all across the voting and. Jungle's the only spot where they didn't finish top 2.
But they're still top 3.
Exactly. Pain Gaming finished top 3 for every single role. The only team to do that. Again, shout out to Pain. It is that consistency. Yeah. And they did get a first place with Wise on that top side. I think we're going to take a bit of time to talk about why JoJo was 3rd. Again, pretty much unanimously third here. We had 1 second place vote, and then 1 no vote from Yeso. So I'll leave you to talk about why you put Nia in there a little bit after, once we've got through Jojo. So Trajan, I'll pass to you for this one.
Jojo, I think, is just we didn't have enough good games out of him. When he was on, when Fluxu was on, this guy was incredible in terms of the work he was doing, setting up his team. The Rakan, especially for Jojo, was insane. Looked like a guy who was just unleashed to kind of pick his battles and pick his own plays, and he was just doing so much work in the teamfight span. Plus, he's been a part of that Bronze laning, right? We say Bronze, for me, I test Bronze looks like an insane laner. As Rudude very correctly pointed out, a lot of good laning is part of the support's game plan. You know, they're very, very important as part of setting up those plays for success, and the AD carries are kind of following up a lot of the time. So Jojo had an excellent laning phase with Bronze, and for, on average, I guess on balance, most of the split, slightly, he had a really good mid and late game team fighting, but there were so many times from Fluxu where the team just looked a little bit lost, a little bit confused, and Jojo was a part of that. So he didn't have the consistency in performance that Seos and Pro Delta did. When Fluxu looked bad, Jojo also looked bad, and I think that it's just not as much value over the course of a split, but his highs were certainly up there with Seos and Pro Delta when he was on.
So for, again, a little bit more context, where we put these players from Split 1, Jojo was our Split 1 best support. Had him number 1 above Seos, above everyone, right? So Jojo, again, worthy of merit, worthy of the credit that he's got given, decidedly amongst our broadcast team, the third best AD carry, aside from Yeso, who has a different third place All-Pro support. So I'll give you your time in the sun to talk about Nia.
I'll keep it real quick because I know we still have MVP to talk about, and we've had a long show already. For me, we knew what we kind of needed to see from INTZ coming into this split to level up. We talked about it, that it felt like they had a lot of good individual pieces, but they really hadn't come together. And so there's 2 really big reasons why they were so successful. One, the leveling up of their solo lanes, especially ZZK, and the team coming together and the teamwork and macro play lining up. And I think a big reason for that is Nia. His combination with Yampi was impressive this split. And I also think, when you look at some of his picks that were looking so good, and I already mentioned the Rel in the green room, I thought was incredibly impressive, especially in the back half of the split. I think his playmaking potential and what he brings to this team is really impressive, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. He's going to be a big part of, if they can succeed in playoffs, because they're going to have some tough matches.
Yeah, and I love Yeso that you actually did shout out Nia, because I feel like Nia's been robbed. Of the top 4 teams right now in the end of the regular season, Nia is the only player who did not win a game MVP. And I think that is so unfair. Nia has had such spectacular plays. Yeah. So I'm glad that additional Yeso down here, you did shout out Nia.
That Alistar game was like one of the sickest support games in like the last week, or maybe the second last week. I think it was week 9.
This was on Saturday. Yeah.
The sickest support games I've seen in the whole split. It was so good from every single second of that game. It's just godlike. So yeah, Nia certainly is on the up and up, that's for sure. And we'll see where he lands next.
It was Sunday against Fluxu.
Sunday was the Rel game. Yeah, you're right, Jade.
Okay.
His headbutt pulverized combos were disgusting. That 4-man combo at Drake was insane.
Yeah.
So we've done top through to bot lane, all the way through the jungle and down to the support role. Now we go to the potentially most coveted role, coveted award that a region can bestow upon a player. The MVP ballots are in, and this was a lot closer, a lot more honorable mentions to come through. So our third All-Pro, our third place for MVP was B-Boy, he scored 8 points. Second was Brunsey, scored 9 points. And in a takeaway from the trend of having AD carries as MVPs, we had Wiser a few points ahead with 12 points as the MVP for CBLOL English. So congratulations to Wiser. You've performed very, very well. Had the biggest reach at the top of any of your, all-pro roles as well. So understandable that Wiser reaches the MVP role. So we're going to give a lot of our honorable mentions, I think, is the best way to go about this, because there are a lot of players that were in contention or that we talked about throughout the split that got mentions in the top 3 voting. So from top down, so 4th place through to wherever we end up going. The next best set of votes for MVP. Pro Delta came in 4th, Root 5th, Titan 6th, Aegis 7th. Yampy got a couple of shout-outs into 8th, Tinones 9, and House in at 10. Got a mention for the top 3 MVP as well. So those are the 10 players that got any points for our MVP. Weiser, of course, coming out on top. And I'm just going to start it off and say that I'm not at all surprised that Weiser comes away as MVP for us this split. I'm happy that it wasn't an AD carry, because I think if you listen to the discussion we had about All-Pro for AD carries, if MVP had have come down to an AD carry as well, we'd have been sat here for hours trying to figure out who briefed the voting. Where most people can majority say Weiser was the best top laner and it wasn't close. And I think that difference is why he's being given the MVP.
Yeah, I think it's funny because like just 3 weeks ago we were talking about it's Brunsey or it's Titan, right? One of those two. It was all about the AD carries, and then the last 3 weeks.
The last week was man, absolutely shocking.
The AD carries had some interesting plays, and Weiser was just like we talk about Root as being consistent. Weiser to me is that plus more carry potential. Like Weiser has just been absolutely nuts.
I think it's fascinating that, as you mentioned, so much of the time this split was spent talking, and it was an AD carry centric meta, so it makes sense. But yeah, we were, and it was Brunsey and Titan was the heavy discussion kind of coming down the stretch, which is funny because it felt like very early on in the split we were all like, oh yeah, like Weiser's the best top laner, and it's not even close. Like I feel like we had him locked in for first team All Pro, barring an absolute disaster at the end of like week 3. But we never really brought him into the MVP conversation, and I think that's a bit of a mistake on our part, because I think he certainly deserves it because he was incredible front to back this split and what he brought to Pain. I do want to ask RMC. I know he still does lose to Brunsey in this, but the fact that B-Boy ends up in top 3 of MVP voting, does that make you feel a little bit better about where he stands?
Yes, I mean if he didn't make top 3, I'd be kind of sad. But ultimately, for me, MVP vote only top 1 matters. Anybody else is not
sure.
So I still feel like he's robbed, but I already vented in the bot side discussion.
Okay,
so.
I think
I had to ask
in the context of Pain. I think Weiser is more important this split to what Pain has done here. Than B-Boy is. In the same way that if you say you could put B-Boy into like Loud and that would improve Loud, as you decided before, I think you could put Root into Pain and they would do the same thing, right? I think Weiser on the top side was more important. And Weiser, not less on the top side, Weiser and Dinkedo, the solo lanes, I think were the most important part of what Pain did here today, or this split. And I think Weiser just so far and away, like it's just not a conversation. The rest of it was a conversation, but ignoring Rude, it was a conversation. It was not a conversation in top lane. It was just Weiser all the way.
Ignoring Rude dude. Something I've noticed, and this is complete unrelated, but I get confused when people talk about Root and me because I frequently get shortened. I frequently get shortened to Rude, which is absolutely fine. But there's that need for differentiation
for the
on occasion.
CBLOL.
If it's,
I mean, great TikToks, carry potential. I understand the confusion.
It's both. Receive the gap from Rude. This is a TikTok we can do.
I'm going to go through my All Pro or my MVP, excuse me, because I think I had completely different from the majority.
You did not have Weiser, Rude.
I didn't have Weiser in my top 3 at all. No.
Okay.
No.
So the hate train is real.
Rolling.
Who watches the fraud watch? That's actually true. So I had Pro Delta number 1. I had Aegis number 2. And I had Root number 3. So I picked basically, I picked my support first team, my jungle first team, and my AD carry first team, sort of as my picks. I think that Pro Delta had the biggest impact on Pain Gaming this entire split. I think that Pain Gaming are our best team going into playoffs. And that's why Pro Delta got my MVP vote, because I think he had, like I say, that he has the most impact on who I perceive to be our best team going into playoffs. That's my justification for how Pro Delta got MVP. I think that by, extension, Aegis has the best impact on the second best team, who I perceive, and Root has the most impact on the third best team going into playoffs. So and this is a discussion that everybody has every year about MVP. What are your metrics? I wanted to explain mine and explain where my votes were coming from, because I think when I do that, it gives a lot more sort of leeway for not going with the norm, let's say.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I did something kind of similar too, except with B-Boy, I guess, because I felt B-Boy was just being robbed left and right. I do think Wise is just irreplaceable, though. The thing to me is that I think any other player can be replaced, and sure, it might be a downgrade in some cases, but you'd still have fundamentally a similar play style. Whereas if you take Weiser out, I just cannot think of another top laner who could replace Weiser right now. Doing the same thing. Like you get DCK, you get great carry potential. Fine.
Yeah.
You replace him with Tay or Batal, you get the utility portion of it, but not the same carry potential. You know, like so.
So it's like it's a difference between you've gone for what makes Pain, which is the ability to have Weiser in the top lane, be weak side, and still dominate, and not necessarily because I don't think that Weiser has the biggest impact on this Pain Gaming roster.
I do think he has the biggest impact. That's what I think he's the most irreplaceable component.
Okay.
But like I do think that I think it is impossible to argue that like Pro Delta has been an upgrade over Damage, because that was like the adjustments that they made here. But I think if you swap Damage into this team and you say, okay, Pain didn't make any roster adjustments going into this split, I don't think they're significantly worse.
Yeah,
like I think they still win 12 games in the regular season. Whereas I think if you take Weiser out of this team, you might not get to double digits.
I just disagree with the first part of that statement. I think that Weiser that Pro Delta has done way more for this team than Damage would have done.
Sure, yeah, but the team would still operate fundamentally the same way. Like you wouldn't have to change up all the other components.
I think the drafts would be the same, right? I don't think it would work as well, and they would have a worse bot lane performance overall.
I think they would have a worse record because they had Damage in instead of
I agree.
Yeah, they would.
I don't think
you just said that
he said they get 12.
If you put Damage gets in, they still get the same score.
No. I said they get 12 wins, which is 2 less. Yes, I think they lose. CBLOL with 12 wins. Yeah, I think they lose probably 2 wins, but I think they lose more wins if you try to trade out Weiser in this team.
I think
is my point.
I find it really funny that the fact that Robo used to be on Pain. Just imagining putting Robo in here. It's just like this doesn't work at all, bro. This doesn't function.
This split Robo would have been a nightmare.
Like I think that would be even more of an obvious liability on this roster if you just put Robo back in.
That's exactly why when we had Robo and Tinouns, Pain would often qualify in like 4th or 5th or 6th, like Loud is doing currently, because that's the way Robo plays.
Crazy that it's Robo in both. Anyway, sorry, let's not. So just to quickly dive in as well, I put Weiser first because I'm correct. I put Root second as well. So I agree with Root and I have been aligned today on Root's value to Loud. We're both very aligned on his value to that team, and I put House third, which is my protest vote of the whole process. Okay. Because I had to.
Controversial of you.
I ended up putting him second in the actual mid votes. I put Tinons first, and I was very sad, and I was like, I can't emotionally deal with not putting him somewhere on the MVP. And I think that he is also just once again when he's on, kind of as Rude said, like the highs that he reaches. It's so important, and he's so valuable in the truest definition of valuable. When he's on, he just didn't have enough of those performances and showed too much of a liability in some of those games. But he is the highest ceiling player in the league, in my opinion. So I put him third.
Understandable.
Does anybody else have points to say on MVP? I feel like we're going to open up this discussion again a little bit when we get to the full graphic of everybody's voting. So I want to move into our final category, and then we can circle back to this a little bit later on. So we've done MVP, we've done top to bottom. Now is our crediting times for our newer players to the CBLOL. We have rookies of the split. Unfortunately, there aren't that many rookies to have fielded. We went for rookie of the split, not rookie of the year, which is why you'll see a lot of notable absentees potentially from this list. There were only 4 rookies that we deemed valid to take entry in this, because obviously there were a lot of Liberty Academy swabbing in their players, got people like Samps coming in for a couple of games. Momochi technically legible if we wanted to make that a rule that you just have to play a game. In terms of rookies that were eligible to be voted for, we had Batao, Raven, Pro Delta, Frosty. This isn't particularly too much of a conversation. I think that as Batao is in third with 9 points, we have Frosty in second with 16 points, with Pro Delta in first with 24 points. Again, the majority of the broadcast team had him first. There was one Inter who we will expose later on who didn't put Pro Delta in at all.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So we'll hold on. I've got this for this specific reason. I knew I'd bought it for something. I knew it would present itself to me.
Yeah.
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 This is Fraud Watch.
Yeah. Spotted.
And we're going to be calling you out later on. I've spotted a fraud.
Yeah.
And you could probably see him pretty well because he's a lot closer to you today than he usually is. So
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, Pro Delta came in at first, Frosty came in at second, Batao came in at third. There were a couple people shouting out Raven for third. I don't think any of them are on this show, so unlucky. I think Raven had a decent second half of the split, but it wasn't anywhere near good enough for him to rank over Batao for me.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cut and dried. I mean, Pro Delta made the All-Pro teams as a rookie, so obviously he's going to take first. I do want to shout out Nia again because he got robbed again. Because he had a bad first split, right? Like,
he just played. Yeah, he was just not great in split one, and then split two.
INTZ is a whole struggle, and if this was Rookie of the Year, I think Nia might actually take it.
He would have been my vote.
There's a
definitely close.
Yeah.
I believe the Brazilian Portuguese broadcast, they will be doing Rookie of the Year. So fingers crossed. I'm hoping Nia gets it because I think he really deserves some sort of award, man. That guy's just getting robbed left and right all year long.
Okay, let's.
Yeah, I'm not sure if ZZK would qualify that actually because he played in TCL before, which isn't like a tier 1 region.
He did, so he would not.
So that would be a.
It's not. I think it was a tier 1 region when he played in it.
Yes, so he would not qualify.
TCL. It's never been a tier 1 region, mate. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Nia, I think rookie.
They had a world
Trey
seed,
just slinging shit,
An
man.
international
Damn.
freebie is how I would describe them, but you know that's.
That's also true.
I think Nia would also be the first rookie nomination that does not come through CBLOL Academy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be interesting. We'll see what.
Let's pull up. Let's go to the next slide, which is going to be a lot more info filled for people who are
Broad watch. If you want to figure out which votes.
So we've highlighted for the most part exceptions to the top 3. For your all-pro voting for MVP, that was just way too difficult. So we've literally highlighted where people put Wiser, and then everybody else has. If you've not put Wiser, you don't get a green little name.
Didn't put Wiser?
That was me. And obviously, I'm calling him out right now. Dia, you inted
absolutely
super hard this rookie prediction. The fact that Pro Delta is not in top 3 at all.
Is criminal.
Requires stern words. Actually, you know what? Twitter, get him.
Yeah. Get him.
Get him.
Beat him up in the CBLOL English Discord server, please.
Yeah.
Everybody at him in there.
Dia's always been a dreamer, you know.
Pro Delta fans unite.
Yeah, can we have Bren make a fraud watch roll and just give it to
slap it on Dia.
Give it to Dia?
That sounds so funny. Are there any overwhelmingly, I guess, stray points that we should talk about for this?
Goot third for X-Man
as a whole.
I heard you mentioned
there we
that
go.
One Goot pick.
Yeah.
It's a Goot pick. Where? Who? Whence? Whomst? Why?
Well, Axeman was the biggest Furrier stan right up until the end, where he bailed and jumped ship. So I can see where I guess he gave like a bit of Goot's the best, but only the third best, and was that little bit of the little bit of Axeman that couldn't let Furrier not get into any of the votes. It seeped through a little bit. I think he
didn't even give Batao third for rookie. But he gives Goot third for jungle. Excuse me.
Oh,
I don't know what's going on there. But,
second fraud spotted. Got you, Axeman.
I do want to shout out his Nosferus second.
Yes, that's actually based.
I like that a lot. Yeah, and I wish we had more mid. Yeah, I wish we had more mid like diversity because I did think that was the one that would get more diversity on. So shout out that and Yeso's Nia their support.
And Lava and mid with you.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah.
The other
I can
shout
say
out
that
I want to
'cause also
make.
voted lava, so.
I have two shout outs. No, just one shout I want to make. One of them is to Trajan for having the most lukewarm takes of the entire voting, because he has all three of his top three are in the top three All Pro. His MVP he put first. His rookie of the split he put first. He is the most aligned with everybody. He doesn't have a single hot take about
Voice
any of the
people,
roles.
bro. The voice of the people.
except for the who cares Batal, I guess, in rookie to the split.
I was getting to that. That's the best part. It's that
It
he has,
doesn't
like,
matter. Like
That's both the vote. So Batal
I mean,
actually
look,
has 10 points instead of 9 points.
Like, I'm not arguing with you, Trajan. I just love that you put it there. Like, you couldn't just put Batal in the box and like move on. You had to be like, no, I gotta say my piece here real fast in this graphic.
it was
yeah.
crazy.
So Batal technically has 10 points. Then that's
Yeah.
that's whatever. But it doesn't change anything too much.
No. But
yeah,
to
that
give-
was my other shout out.
To give Trajan credit, I think he did his fairly early, like before.
Yeah.
I did mine. Yeah, I did mine first.
3 people who'd done those when I did
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, because when I first looked at the spreadsheet, Trajan had already done his, and I think those like half of us were still empty. So it might be lukewarm, but Trajan really truly is the voice of the people. Like he just.
Yeah. All of you Loud fans out there, if you have nothing to complain about, Trajan was the most aligned with anybody.
Yeah.
In the CBLOL.
Exactly.
So, I think honestly, do we have anything else to talk on? 'Cause do we want to still do predictions and look forward?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Let's.
Just
okay.
fire predictions.
So, those were all of the things, the votings for our MVPs and our All Pros. So go away, enjoy those. We'll post them on Twitter as well. And roast us in the comments, I think, for any atrocities or any people that you think may be missing. I think that was the other point that I wanted to make, was that Ninja Kiwi got 0 votes for bot lane, and I think that doesn't represent how strong Ninja Kiwi actually was as a player for INTZ this split. I think he could have very easily saw himself getting 1 or 2 votes in the top 2, top 3 as a chance. That could have definitely happened. So
The hard part is just AD carry was just such a top heavy role.
yeah.
It's just so hard to sneak in there with the likes of like we're already arguing over the Brunsey and Bevoy and Root conversation. Yeah. It makes it so hard to push your way in there as Ninja Kiwi.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to round 1 of playoffs. This is going to be happening from Friday this week. So remember, everybody, set your calendars 1 day earlier. We have got Fluxu versus VKS. This is our 5-6 matchup. The lower bracket game, loser goes home. You lose here, you have the most miserable playoffs run of your life. And I would say this is the most one-sided series we will have the entire playoffs.
I hope so, man. I sure hope so. But I'm
It's
so scared.
It's stars.
I'm so scared.
I think I'm equal parts. This is a VKS 3-0 and this is a Fluxu 3-0.
Yeah.
I could not tell you
Wow.
what is going to happen in this series, but my prevailing thoughts is that VKS are just going to flop. And sad, but I do just think Fluxu are going to 3-0 this.
I mean,
But
history,
again,
that's
I
what
wouldn't be
happened last
surprised. I just wouldn't be surprised if Fluxu died and left the region in playoffs atrocities once again.
Wait, they got 3-0 by Fury last split, right?
Yep. And they came sick.
Yeah, it's simultaneously possibly the most lopsided series, but also it feels like the biggest coin flip too, which is terrifying. But yeah, I mean,
I think any VKS series is going to look like that though.
Yeah. And you guys know where I stand on VKS. For me, this just comes down to like which Fluxu shows up on the day. Right?
Mhm.
Are they able to get House kind of the picks that he can really succeed on? And can they team fight well and like set Brunty up for success? Because like we know he's gonna get leads. He's gonna be in a position to take over the game in the late game. It's whether or not the rest of the team will be like ready to go and not make kind of big mistakes when it comes to that stage of the game. That's the biggest question for me every time with Fluxu.
Okay, so quick fire predictions. What do we got? Final score.
Fluxu 3-0. Yeah. Fluxu 3-0.
I'm gonna go 3-1, and I know that's like the cop out prediction, but it's legitimately because I feel like Fluxu will throw a game.
I feel like Grell will win one game type situation.
Yeah, like I think 100% that Fluxu will throw a game.
Trajan, you've been here before. You've been here before. The Fluxu Stan, the big man in the mid lane
for 2 splits, and I'm battered and bruised.
I don't think it's.
You know?
Is it time to bail? Is it time to bail right now?
No,
so early.
Not for this VKS roster. The red game happened, but the Furia game also happened. I can't like jump onto the VKS train for now.
Yeah.
I think they haven't reached the point that they wanted to get to. They've just not come together to properly contest the top 5 in a best of series. I have to take Fluxu here. I'm gonna take 3-2 Fluxu because I am just I'm so underwhelmed by week 9. And
I can hear Trajan's PTSD.
I mean, look, it's important to note that Fluxu's trajectory this split almost identically matches last split, man. Right? Little bit of a rough start, really good and kind of taking over in the middle of the split, and then they stumble into playoffs and end up in the 5th, 6th matchup. And last time they got 3-0'd by the 6th place team, and if they get 3-0'd by VKS, it is literally a carbon copy of Split 1.
2 of those Furia games had IU on Belveth support, by the way.
Yep.
So they lost twice to Belveth support against the 6th place team, having had an 8-game win streak in that split. I'm gonna take 3-2. I won't take the cop out 3-1, but my faith has been shaken significantly, as you guys have heard over today. So I'll take 3-2. I think they make it, and depending on how that series goes, we'll see how far they make it, because they've shown a good record against top teams. But
the problem is they likely have to face their nemesis in the next set. Like unless you're predicting INTZ to win, they're gonna have to play INTZ and then next best of 5, and they haven't solved that puzzle.
No.
Let's move on to that next best of 5 then.
Yeah.
Pain Gaming versus INTZ is our Saturday game. This is 1st versus 4th for our seeding. So Pain Gaming chose to play up against INTZ in this game. Again, I think this is now I think both of the next 2 series are going to be very close. INTZ have proven that they can go toe-to-toe with Pain. Yeah, you're trolling, bro.
Okay,
we're gonna get out of here.
Tradition!
I'm gonna get first in here on this. I'm 3-2 Pain. I think it goes 5 games.
RMC held up his whiteboard, had Pain 3-0 over INTZ.
As long as Pain don't play a poke comp, easy 3-0, baby.
Yeah, no Jace, no loss, I think, potentially for Pain. But no,
just don't play cute and draft, man. Just pick freaking.
Don't play cute and draft. Just ban ZZK's best champions, and then we'll see. Because I think that was another ZZK Olaf incident.
True, yeah, into the yeah.
So I think
they also picked Trundle, which was like, really karaoke.
INTZ will win this series.
Let's go.
And I think the ZZK is more than just an Olaf trick pony.
Yep.
Because the INTZ, the only team that have been able to best Pain in the top lane. They've killed Weiser a couple times already. ZZK has been able to find solo kills as well this split. I think Karaoke is outmatched by Yampi in the jungle. And I don't think that the difference between Dinkedo and Nosferus, Ninja Kiwi, and B-Boy is enough to change that around. And I look at supports.
At the end of the day, might be this.
I look at supports. I give Pro Delta definitely a strong chance.
There you go.
But I think Nia can also match. And I think supports may end up deciding this series, which is where it does go a little bit more toward Pain. But I'm going for the bold call. I think that INTZ can win this series.
Based.
I don't think it's like a crazy bold take
Yeah.
at all.
I think in their win versus Pain was the second win. They lost the first time round, to be clear. The second round versus Pain where they won, that was one of the most like clear outclassings that Pain has suffered through this split.
Yep.
Where they picked a real comp. They didn't like int the draft. They just lost.
Yeah.
I think
They
all
just
three
lost.
potentially of other Pain's losses have been them inting draft. At least 2 of them were. So I would love to believe, but Pain playoffs is not. They're already looking sick, and Pain playoffs is good. Pain grand finals different. Pain playoffs very good. They've beaten Loud earlier in the playoffs, you know. So I think that I will take Pain. I'm gonna take them 3-1.
Wise choice.
I think that INTZ will find a game because they have also been drafting really well. To be clear, INTZ have been one of our best drafting teams through the split. And I think they might just get an advantage at one point. So I'll take 3-1. But I think Pain are going to become and end up as the better team. INTZ, still, they won that game, but they had moments of doubt. And I think a lot of these players do not have experience in the winner's side in like high pressure playoffs games. And they're going to suffer versus Pain, who have been here many a time. So I think it's going to be Pain.
The biggest inroad for me for INTZ is like, I don't think that, because I don't know that Pain wants to spend the draft resources. I don't know that you can ban out ZZK. Now, granted, you could talk about the Wiser's ability to absorb pressure on the top side, and I think that's going to be the toughest part for ZZK. But like, you can ban the Olaf, but like Gwen is still a great pick for him. Give him the Rumble, give him something like the Kennen or the Jax. Like, I think there's multiple other things that the ZZK can bring to the table and take over the game. And I don't think that Pain's going to be willing to spend the draft resources to really push him deep down in that pool. And that's I think the biggest inroads for INTZ is like, I think they're going to be able to get ZZK a pick that he likes and a pick he can take over the game on.
Counterpoint, I think you just pick Karaoke, something that can actually gank instead of Trundle, because you get like 0 successful ganks in the laning phase, which I think was a large part of that. You just ban the Olaf and actually gank the lane.
I mean, but at the same time, I think if INTZ is drawing ganks topside, like as long as ZZK isn't inting, that's also an INTZ win. If you're drawing pressure, I think so.
Because I'd take Bevo over Ninja Kiwi. Well, I would say ban maybe Silver.
No, I agree. But like if you're drawing those early game resources away from bottom lane, you can maybe more actively attack Bevoy in the laning phase.
Yumpy's definitely more likely to be proactive in the early game than Karaoke.
Yeah. I think that's the
so
pain point.
If Karaoke's proactivity is spent top lane and Yumpy is able to put Bevoy behind, there's definitely a world where Ninja Kiwi can carry, because Ninja Kiwi can carry games.
Yeah.
What's your predictions then? I'm 3-2 for INTZ. I know RMC said 3-0 for Pain. Trajan 3-1 to Pain. Yeso.
Yeah.
3-2 Pain.
3-2 Pain. Okay, so we have a nice little spread.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So
3 understandable, and 1 completely boggles my mind. Rude, but continue.
Let's get on to the most easily predictable, definitely not just nonsense, ridiculous chaos perma matchup.
Okay, let's do no context predictions this time.
Okay.
Because people, what would happen is we would have the discussion and we'd formulate our opinions. I want off the cuff, straight up predictions, and then we can
3-0 loud.
We were
3-0 loud.
3-2 loud.
3-0 red.
Oh.
Wow.
Bro, he's cooking.
I feel like if you predict 3-0 for one of these teams, it's not red.
3-0 red.
Yeah.
I'll explain it later. We want to quick fire. Go, Root.
3-2. It's 3-2 loud, I think.
Oh man.
Dude, give us the 3-0 red.
Somebody else said that, right?
I said 3-2
Yeah,
loud.
you and Trajan.
Okay.
Guys, my new shipment of copium has hit. The playoff copium is in town. I'm just predicting a loud loss to get them out of the way of pain, man. Just get them out. My honest fear is if Loud win one game, they're not gonna stop at one. So if Red want to win this, they got a 3-0. If any gap happens, I get scared because Loud is disgusting when it comes to playoffs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited for top lane because FNB has hit a peak at
it's
the
the
right
battle
time.
of
Versus the Renekton
Sorry.
blind pickers associated up in top side.
Yeah, but FNB will do that as well. Like they're actually going to be we're going to see B1 Renekton in this
exactly
series.
right. Both they're both in.
Wait,
that
we need to make a
association.
TikTok clip. This can be TikToked.
Yeah.
CBLOL enjoyers from around the globe, tune in on Sunday for B1 Renekton.
It's gonna happen, man, and like both of them have shown
Jurassic
they
Park
can do it
CBLOL
to
edition.
us, right? I just have to hope and pray that Red lets FNB try and beat Robo in lane. Don't give him Cassante, don't give him Sion, give him something he can try and beat Robo on, because it's possible. It's happened before. And if you shut Robo down, that top side falls apart for Loud. Unless he has Darius, you know, that's a question that Payne found the answer to earlier in the split. But I think that
Payne also played Cassante, so they into that.
yeah. I mean, it was tough. But they also like Robo was like 0-4 in lane. They like crushed him on the Darius. They ruined his day, and it just didn't matter after 50 minutes, I guess. But I think top lane is going to be really massive there. Bot lane. I'm going to be watching Titan again up to level 4 with Rude's magnifying glass out, and we're gonna like, okay, let's see it. Let's see the character development here. And then I think mid lane is going to be fine. I don't think anyone gets a massive lead there. So I'm really watching top and bot.
It is important to note that FMB and Robo are essentially middle of the pack in terms of early game. A goal difference of 15 plus 81 for FMB plus 26 for Robo. So they essentially leave the early game dead even in lane on average in terms of gold.
Mm-hmm. I think the problem is that Robo scales better, like as a player, than FNB does. And FNB has been known to have a bit of a playoff debuff, shall we call it? So
he chokes.
Yeah, I am a little
to
bit
put it in plain terms. He's a choker. He's a playoff choker. FNB. Let's be honest about
he
it.
has been.
Chase intended, not me. Don't blame me, Red fans. I'm actually more interested in the jungle matchup because I think Aegis has been one of our best junglers, and I think if you can expose Croc, that actually breaks a lot of Loud down. When you can break Croc, if you break Croc, you break Robo as well, almost guaranteed. So
it's been more like minus Croc than Loud Croc over this split. You know, it's been plenty of yep and nope on the crop scale.
Plenty of forgetting to buy jungle item and falling down on stage, but also
no.
He did well that game. Considering
the fail flash and that clip of him of like Robo looking over, laughing at him, and him just sliding down in his chair was classic.
Oh man! Yeah. I think
shout out
if you can
for
expose Croc, that's where Loud falls apart.
Quick shout out for most well integrated import does indeed go to Croc.
Naturalized Brazilian.
Does it, or does it go to Wiser, who's basically
it goes to Croc?
No,
No, it goes to
Wiser
Croc.
has a bit of composure still. Croc does not.
Wiser still feels like a Korean import, slightly because he is so far ahead of the rest of the competition. But also because he doesn't get down in the Brazilian tomfoolery.
Yeah.
Where Croc
he gets down in the muck, bro.
Yeah. That's more so.
We love him for it.
Yeah, as much as we have melting Croc, we also have like finger wagging at your opponent's Croc. You know, he's getting involved. And to be fair, to contrast that to Croc after like week 3 or 2, when we had an interview with him, and he was pretty sad. He was like, "We're so bad, man, and like we keep trying to do stuff, and it just doesn't work. And we really need to polish this up. We need to fix this because this isn't good enough." And we're like, yeah, kind of. So it was sad to see him like that. But now he's like fail flashing and laughing and having a good time in a game that they're still going to win. So we have returned to at least the Brazilian energy is back to maximum for Croc. I just hope that we get some of the split 1 consistency that he did show back again in time for playoffs.
Can I also point out we are combo breakers? We interviewed Croc and he won a game, and then Loud started popping off. We interviewed Crosdale and Kaboom won. So I'm just saying, like. Teams are struggling in CBLOL. Come to the CBLOL English interviews.
We'll fix it up, yeah.
Okay, I think we've hit an end. We've talked about week 9. We did a big award ceremony, and we talked about the playoffs. I, for one, am very happy that CBLOL regular season has finished. If not for the fact that we had 18 glorious days of games, for the fact that we're going to have 8 more, and they're all going to be best of 5s, and they're all going to be very exciting. So I think we're going to come to a natural end of episode 10 of Gringos Liberados. Thank you, everybody, if you've stuck all the way through. Final PSAs. Reminder, games start on Friday this week instead of Saturday. So we've got 3-game weekend. Very exciting for everybody to get playoffs kicked off. The CBLOL English actually has a community Discord. There's going to be a link in the description to the new Discord that got set up for everybody to come chat about CBLOL largely in English. Of course, follow the Twitch channel, follow all of our Twitters as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for staying tuned in. Thank you to my guests for joining me for today. And we will see you all next week for another episode of Gringos Liberados.